I know what I forgot to tell you. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll cut this part out. So I do the introduction separately.
Yeah. So we'll just get straight into it. Gotcha.
Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Courtney Krulis. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Courtney is a friend of, oh gosh, I can't remember what episode it was, but with Lisa, what was her title?
Lisa Wennick.
Anyway, Lisa Wennick. Right, but I was trying to remember the title of her episode. Anyway, Courtney is guest number 2 from Australia, so I'm super excited to be creating this international podcast. Welcome to the show, Courtney. Thank you so much
for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So let's get right into it. The first question always is, what were the values and beliefs that were instilled in you in your childhood that then contributed to some of the decisions you made as a young adult?
So I grew up in a beautiful, amazing Jewish family where values of, being as a family, dinners and spending lots of time together was very important, and following the way that my mother had lived and my grandmother had lived and my great-grandmother had lived, and which was to marry a Jewish man at a young age and have children and have a stable job and work in the corporate space.
Sure.
Or be a teacher, something that was, a good job for a woman. I guess I followed a lot of that trajectory, went to university, studied education and business, and then kind of one day was like, wait a minute, is this sort of the life that I want to lead? But I will say that I did already have like a little bit of a, this doesn't feel totally right. And I think my parents were pretty clued in that I was quite a big personality. I was maybe a little bit different to my older sisters. And so when I was 16, I actually asked my mum if I could move schools, because I went to a Jewish school my whole life. I had Jewish friends. I never had a non-Jewish boyfriend or any of that. I always definitely played by the rules growing up. And then at 16, I said to my mum, I feel like I feel really different and I want to try something new. And so it was a huge risk for my mum, and she let me go to, a private girls' school, which was huge for her. That felt like totally rebellious of me, even though, I look back in hindsight and like laugh at that. But that was like the first time that I sort of broke the mold from my family. And from there, I kind of started to do my own thing and find myself that was beyond the construct of what my family values sort of were.
Mm-hmm. So they valued education, but up to a certain point, because then you were just going to be pretty much a homemaker. Was that the idea? Or you were expected to have a career and
definitely a homemaker. Have children, take care of them, have a good job, but not a job better than your husband necessarily. Marry someone who was Jewish and had a great job and could provide for you. Make safe and good decisions for your future self.
Right. Okay. So how did that work out? You've already alluded to the fact that you are a rule breaker.
Well, I laugh at saying I broke the rules at age 16, because I wouldn't exactly say a private girls' school is that rebellious, but it felt big not being in a Jewish school for the first time in my life and having friends that weren't Jewish. That felt big to me. But then I ended up going to university and meeting a lawyer who was Jewish, and that he was tall and good at sport and ticked every single box, and my parents were madly in love with him. And as soon as my parents kind of gave me the tick of approval, it was like, this is the man I'm going to marry at age 19 when I met him. And so I continued to just like do what everyone else was doing and
follow the rules. Even though you considered yourself a rule breaker, you weren't you didn't color too far outside the line.
And I think I always knew in my like spirit, so to speak, that I was always a little bit different. Like I always felt like I loved everyone around me. I felt super supported and and connected to everyone in a way, but there was always something in me that felt like there was more in this life for me than I was currently living. And I ended up moving to New York with my husband at the time. He was doing his MBA, and so I went along with him and worked there. And it was sort of as soon as I got out of that little bubble of the Jewish community in Australia and I saw like the bigger world in America that I kind of started to get this inkling of, whoa, I've been living this really small sheltered life and now the world seems so much bigger. And have I made the right choices? And so my sort of journey really began of seeing the world much bigger from my belief systems and values and all that once I got away from my very close family who, my parents are very involved in my life, always, encouraging me to make the decisions that they've made and always share their advice, even though it's very often not asked for, they just feel the need to share all the time what their thoughts and beliefs are.
Isn't that what parents do? Like that's what they
sign and
up for.
Always with great intention. So
job.
I don't I never get frustrated by it, but it definitely can influence the way that I see and the decisions that I make. That once I was away from that and I got to really find myself, I realized I was living a life that they wanted me to have, not necessarily the life that I was choosing.
Right. That's why. Did you go away to
so
school?
in Australia, I was, lived at my parents' house. I've lived at home for so long. And I think that's what I love about the US is that you go to college and you find yourself because you're away from your family. Whereas, for me, I lived at home for a long time and was deeply influenced by my parents and especially ones that were extremely involved. Like even my grandmother still calls to give me advice on a daily basis.
Yeah, there are pluses and minuses to that. I could see how that is. But I think that is one of the great things about, I see a lot of conversation online and being an entrepreneur myself, and as you are, and we'll get into that in a minute, but that is college necessary and is going away to school, worth the money. And sometimes I look at it as it's not about the money and it's not about what you're learning at school per se in your classes. It's that opportunity that you're talking about to discover who you are and to live independently and to explore. Yeah,
for sure. I went on exchange when I was 19 to University of Miami, and I really got to see oh my gosh, the Americans just know what they're doing. It was so much fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, Miami is a completely different country just in and of itself. So
yeah, well, it was definitely a lot of fun, that's for sure. I was I cannot imagine doing this for 4 years, but boy, was it a good time for 6 months.
I bet. So, okay, so you're in New York and you are exploring who you are and you're thinking, wow, there's this whole world out there that I never knew existed.
And then someone told me you should come to Burning Man, which is a festival in the middle of the desert. And it was 8-hour drive from Los Angeles, and I was living in New York. So it was a huge thing. And, there's no cell reception. You bring absolutely everything you need with you. It's a festival of radical self-reliance, and where everyone just comes. There's no money. It's just a bartering. Well, not even bartering. You're just giving. That's the essence of Burning Man, to just give your gifts. And so I went there with no expectation of what this festival was. I went, and that was a huge shift in my life, because I saw how an alternative universe could be, one where, we were truly living from our soul's purpose or just giving our soul's gifts. So I was at one of my gifts was I made these little fans that said, happy Burning Man. And it was something that I'd created, and that felt really great. And I also sung. So I would go into the middle of the desert and just start singing. And that was part of my contribution. And other people's contributions would be to set up a food stall. Someone else would be playing music. And this whole festival is created based on community coming together to share their gifts. And I remember just at one point I was like, why does our world exist, and why do we have money, and why isn't it all equal? And it made me question every single value I'd ever grown up with, when we could actually create something from scratch where everyone just came together in community to share their gifts and talents and how they love to be in the world, and came with these massive open hearts and with such diverse cultures and talents. And yeah, it was that moment of just, why is the universe or the world the way that it is? And it made me question everything. And I kind of came back and wanting to have this huge desire to build something like that in my life. And so, yeah, that took me to Byron Bay, where, you know, it's such an incredible community here. And I've actually just moved into land in Mullumbimby, and I've got people that are coming to live on the land and not pay rent, but they do gardening, and the other person is building something on the land. So we're really just redefining how money can be used or how energy can be used, because, you know, we just live in such a limited way of thinking about how we can exchange energy.
Right, because everything is energy. We live in a world that we have this illusion that there are things other than energy, but really everything is made up of energy. Interesting. So back up for a second, because you were living in New York and you went to Burning Man, and now you're in Byron Bay.
Yeah, connect the dots. So
connect the dots, please.
I came back from Burning Man after I would say it was the most profound experience of my life. Just a huge shift. Made me question my entire life, how I was living, what values I was living by, who had chosen them, how had society been created, how did I want to live. So every single thing was questioned in that week of being at Burning Man. And I came back, and there was one point where I was in the desert, kind of in this dust storm, and my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I it became this whole metaphor for my life about how I'm just like not really seeing beyond the construct. Like I couldn't see more than, you know, a meter above my face. And I went straight to the temple, which is a beautiful space at Burning Man, and I just started writing myself a letter about how I want to be in this world, what values I choose, you know, outside the life that I've been living. What would my future life look like if I lived by these values? And I could see that I was totally on the wrong track in life. And so I came back from the burn, I called my husband, and I was like, I've had this huge epiphany, and I don't think we're supposed to be together. I don't see our life together. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do all this, you know, living this separate life. And he was obviously extremely taken aback by it all and asked if he could come on this journey with me. And I was like, sure, if you're open to it, let's do it. And we tried for a bit, and I think he very quickly realized that wasn't, you know, he was very happy in the construct in which he lives, and that wasn't the path that he wanted to choose. And so we consciously sort of chose these separate ways, and I've just continued to go down that more spiritual path of questioning everything in life and really making decisions from a place of my intuition, and really not listening to my mind and all the stories and beliefs I've been told my whole life. I now actually like truly tune in every day and be like, what is true for me today to be living and doing? And I just live from that place. And that has taken me to Mullumbimby. You know, I never planned out how my life would be. I've just really followed the little breadcrumbs along the way, and it's taken me to the most magical places that my mind could have never, ever, ever constructed.
Very cool. How do you do that, tuning in?
It's a big practice. I spend about two hours in the morning, but it always starts off with a little bit of movement. I'll do some qigong, I'll do some yoga, I'll do some dancing, and then I'll meditate for at least half an hour. I'll do some journaling, and then I pick affirmation cards. So I actually have my own deck that I've written, but I use all different kinds of cards just to ask my higher self, you know, what is in the greatest good for me to know today. And the wisdom I get from cards and how it allows me to journey deeper within myself is really profound.
Interesting. Okay, so did you get some kind of training on how to do the meditations that you're doing? Or like, how did you get into the practice, this extensive practice that you're doing? You tell me more about how you learned to do that, or where the inspiration to do that came from. So it was actually at
Burning Man. I was someone before then, like exercise. That's what I said. I run. That's my meditation. I'm a runner, and that's when I get to be with my thoughts. And I would have this huge block against sitting down in meditation. Like for me, I was so hyperactive, moving a million miles an hour, working in a corporate job. Like I did not have time to sit for 5 minutes. No. And I went.
Wait, you just reminded me of, there's that Buddha, or that the Buddhist phrase, quote, that if you don't have time to meditate for 1 hour a day, you should spend 2
I heard
hours.
It was, if you don't have time to sit for 5 minutes, sit for 10 minutes.
Okay, similar. Exactly.
And
Go on.
I was at Burning Man, and I walked into this workshop, and I see this guy who was actually a friend of mine in New York, and I was like, oh, Nico, and he was running this workshop, and I was like, cool. And it was all about meditating and dancing. And he's like, if you're someone with a super hyperactive mind and you're always doing things a million miles an hour, like many New Yorkers, you should wake up and dance first and then meditate. And so I tried this practice at Burning Man, and it was the first time I experienced stillness in my mind. And I was like, I went up to him like, that was amazing. And I chatted to him. He's like, I'm a meditation teacher. You should learn with me. And we became really, really good friends. And then from that day forward, I then danced. Every morning I would wake up and I would dance to the song Open Your Eyes, which is a theme from Daybreaker, which is a dance movement company community in America, in the US. And that was when I went. So that guy that I met at Burning Man lived in New York. We went to Daybreaker together, which is that community, and we did this morning sunrise, and that song just became this like song for my life. Every day I'd wake up and dance to this song. And then over time, I've built my practice to now be about 2 hours, but it started off with 5 minutes of dancing and 5 minutes of sitting, and then expand it. Funnily enough, as nature would have it, when I came to Byron Bay, Nico, that guy from Burning Man, was in Australia for his sister's wedding, and we bumped into each other on the beach being like, what are you doing in Australia in Byron Bay? And we ended up falling in love. And he was the one that we just bought a house, we bought this house together in Mullumbimby, and my whole life from the moment I met him to getting me into this place was all like, it was like this crazy sense of coincidences that the universe wanted us to create all this stuff together, which we have. And yeah, so it's just been a magical journey, and now we've just split up, which is really interesting too, because it's now I'm ready for this second evolution of myself, and so I'm feeling again that, we talk about living this fine life. Like I'm not about fine. I'm always like from good to great, and like, when it's let's keep evolving and growing and letting go of what no longer serves, so we can continue to show up and truly live out our destiny.
It sounds like you're getting really good at the letting go and letting things evolve part of things, which I think a lot of people struggle with, because we tend to want to hold on to what we know. And because it's familiar. I was going to say, safe, it's familiar. I was going to say it's comfortable, but a lot of times it's not comfortable. Yes. It's just familiar. And so it's very difficult to let go and to allow what else, the next thing to come in. Because you have to a lot of times you have to let go of something before the new thing can come in. But we want the new thing before we let go to make sure that we're going to be okay.
Too afraid to live in the mystery.
That's not exactly how it works. Yeah, and then I also wanted to step back a second too when you were talking about the movement before the meditation. And so, I create these custom meditations, customized gratitude meditations for clients. And I hear a lot of times when I'm talking about and teaching about meditation, I can't sit still. So I love that you shared this technique of kind of like getting all the energy out of your body.
Yes.
And then sitting
it was
down.
Profound for me until you've had the experience of stillness, and then you can tap into that stillness more frequently. But for someone, especially for myself, who is so hyperactive, so stimulated from a very young age, I never knew how to sit still. So that just was never going to happen for me. And now I can sit, for hours, but it's taken a lot of time and I appreciate that stillness so much more in my life now, because I can actually experience it fully. Whereas when you're sitting and your mind's just racing, it's so ungratifying.
And yeah, it's uncomfortable and ungratifying. And you come out of it
yes,
more agitated
sure.
than because you were trying so hard to get to that place of stillness and it wasn't working. And it's just like,
I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it. I can't do it.
Yes.
You know, so we give up.
Right. Which is not the point of meditation. It's not to make you more aggravated and agitated. But yeah. So that just is another point that meditation is a practice. It's not like you sit down one day and you are a monk and can sit and meditate for hours with no thoughts at all going through your head. You know, again, you've expanded your practice through practice.
And I still have days when my mind is deeply racing and
of course, we all do. Yeah. Okay. So continue the story of, so you and Nico created this whole amazing thing and then parted ways. And what's next?
Yeah, well, I'm back in the mystery again. I think I wanted to touch on the fact that you said I've gotten really good at this idea of letting go. And I want to just reiterate that this is it's a muscle that we need to learn to flex. I think the first time I did it when I was 16 and I took that risk of like, what I know is familiar. I've always lived in I've always been in Jewish school, had Jewish values. That piece of curiosity came up around, is there more for me here? Like, I could always have this, but what if? And so I was obviously a very curious child and teenager. But because I flexed that muscle quite young and my parents were quite encouraging of me to do something that was a little bit different, I was able to flex that muscle. And there's still so much fear every time I do it, but I get better and better at it because I see that when we let go of what no longer serves, we're able to really experience the magic of life, because the universe is always giving us these little breadcrumbs when we follow them, we don't get to see the loaf of bread yet. Like, that comes and, you know, you get slices along the way, but often it's just little breadcrumbs and then more magic and more magic. And I actually just went camping this weekend, and it was so, I'll try and make this story as short as possible, but in essence, I was really struggling with this breakup because he's the most beautiful, perfect man. Our life is amazing. We've been creating this incredible dance movement, and we've got this corporate workshop business together. Things are flowing, and it's been so amicable and perfect. And for whatever reason, he said to me, I'm just not fully in this. I don't know why. I love you as my best friend. I love you as my business partner, but there's something in me. And I could feel this, like, not 100% commitment. I would say I felt 99.9%, but I know that little something. And I was like, what is it? He's like, I just don't know. And having been on the other end of that, being with someone who I wasn't 100% in, I know that that doesn't serve him and therefore doesn't serve me and doesn't serve the highest good. Therefore, we let go and we see what's available in the nothingness. But in that being in the nothingness and letting go of something that I absolutely loved with all of my heart, I knew that the mystery was called, that the emptiness, there would be the magic. Anyway, I go and I'm camping, and I was like, I just need to shift something. Let me see what is in the highest good. And I went for this huge walk along the beach, and I watched this eagle fly above. Like, this eagle was following me the entire way. And the eagle, you know, obviously represents one that can see things from a higher vantage point, one that isn't so caught up in the little stuff, that it allows you to see the greater picture. And all this wisdom was coming in from our relationship and why we're not together. And I could just start to see things. And I'm watching this eagle as, like, wisdom and downloads are kind of coming into me. And I watch it like shit, right? And it like poos and like shit comes out from it, and it turns into a rainbow because of the light. And it was just like, what?
Oh, wow.
And it became this huge metaphor for me in that moment of like, oh my gosh, from up close, it feels like you're in a shitstorm. Like, it, you know, but from a higher vantage point, it's really just letting go of what no longer serves and releasing. And that paves way for the magic of life to come through. And so I was like, oh, I've just been in the shitstorm. I'm just waiting for the magic now. And I just like, I felt this huge wave of peace and acceptance come over me of like, oh, I'm in, and the magic is about to come. And so, yeah, I'm still sort of seeing how the pieces are unfolding. But funnily enough, the next day I had, when I got back, a friend of mine wants to move in, and her best friend, partner, pseudo partner, he's a gardener and he's going to build this space, and anyway, my whole vision for how I want to live in terms of having community is now coming to fruition because Nico isn't there anymore. And so I'm just like, wow, something greater is happening. And I always say, give up the good, you get the great in life. And so don't hold on to good. If good isn't 100 full body yes, 100%, then it's a no. And so give up that thing to allow space for the new to come in.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful and so easy to say, and doing it is a different thing. However, like you said, I mean, all of the practices that you're talking about contribute to your being able to do that. And I'll say more easily, but I don't mean easy. It's not easy, but it is allows you to be more accepting of the situation.
I think another thing too is all about the frequency that we put out in life. Like when we're in our heart and we're the frequency of love, we will have everything that the universe that we desire. Yes. And so I refuse to live in a frequency of fear or a frequency of like concern about the future, because then nothing's going to come to me. And I say refuse. I really choose not to. I find it challenging when I'm in those spaces of, this isn't how my life was supposed to unfold, especially when I'm in this beautiful relationship where everything's working and then the rug just gets pulled from underneath me. But in that rug being pulled out and I'm in that state, all I can do is come back to my heart and just have that knowing that everything is working out for me. And so all these practices help to bring me back to my heart. And I know that the second I'm not in my heart, that nothing's coming through. And so if I remember that and know that, of course, the universe wants me to have everything and I can only be me. And if that doesn't serve me, then that doesn't serve anyone or the highest good. And so when I can remember that in those moments and hold myself and give myself the love or validation that I was seeking in other, I then can be the frequency of love and go out and receive in this world.
Again, that's super easy to say and to understand as you're saying it. Yes, that makes sense. But when you're in that actual moment of fear or misunderstanding, like, why is this happening? I don't say necessarily putting yourself in the victim mode of why is this happening to me, but why is this happening? And feeling that fear. Is there a technique or something that you use immediately in that moment?
Yes.
To flip the switch?
When I'm feeling that fear, I'll ask myself, what is underneath this? Like, what is here? And then I will choose. So allow myself the space to like, oh, wow, that's what my mind's telling me. Wow, I maybe journal about it and just be with that information and then choose the higher. So let's say in relationship, I have choices that I choose every day, call it manifesting, and I choose the end result of a loving, passionate, joyful relationship where we support each other in our greatness. And so I want that greatness for myself. I want that greatness for my partner. And if the greatness is us not being together, then there's someone who that greatness will be with. So I can feel like, oh, in this moment, it sucks. Like I'm really sad and feel that grief. And then tune back into what does it feel like in my heart to be with someone, to be in that kind of relationship. And that takes me back to my center, to my heart, to my vision. And then I can call that back in, because we are operating from that place of the heart, the emotion, whatever emotion we're experiencing is what will attract into our lives, or more of that. And so I just have to flick that from fear to love, from fear to fun. And often for me, that's dancing through that too. So I might just put on music and shake out, breath, sound, movement, shake it out. And allow my body, also not just my mind to have the space, but my body to like release that fear, because there's energy that's stuck in the body, and I'll move that and then come back to my heart. And what's true is that I know that I'm worthy, deserving, and good enough of this incredible relationship that I want in my life. And so I'm going to have it if I stay in the frequency of love.
Fabulous. Love it. So that is a perfect segue into what is the song that you listen to when you need to get into that higher vibration and higher frequency and charge yourself
So I
up.
often listen to the Daybreaker theme song, which is Open Your Eyes. And it's just all about, the life we live. See every day as a gift. Open your eyes. And I just love what that stands for. And sometimes I'll even just sing my own song and start riffing on my own lyrics to pump myself up, because I know what I need in those moments and what I need to hear. And that's always a beautiful practice too.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to put a link to that song in the show notes. Wait, you said you have your own song. Is there
it's
a
not up
recording
yet,
of that?
but I will send it to you once we have it.
Okay, so
Great.
we'll put a link to both songs. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to continue a conversation?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram. At the moment I'm going by Coco Krulis, but that may change back to Courtney Krulis. I go between my two names. But yeah, on Instagram.
Okay.
And then I also have affirmation cards that I've written, and they're at pickmeupcards.com. So they're punny, playful, uplifting, empowerment cards to help make joy a daily practice.
Fabulous. And they make a great gift as well for yourself or for your closest or not even closest.
Yes, anyone who just
friends.
needs a pick-me-up, send them their way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a
Thank you so
Four-Letter
much for
Word.
having me. It was so much fun to chat, and always interesting to dissect the idea of fine. It's definitely, when we weren't born to be on this earth to live a fine life, we would learn to, we were here to live something absolutely magnificent.
Yes.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
All right.
All the best,
Take
Lori.
care.